Hello, welcome back to the Burn, Fat, and Feast podcast. My name is Sarah Thomas, your host, and today I have a special guest. Jenn Trepeck is here today to talk with us about one of my most favorite topics. I mean, I have to say a lot of wellness topics in general are like my jam. I love them, but motivation. We're discussing motivation today. And if you have followed this podcast for a while, I talk about motivation quite a bit. If you are inside the Burn, Fat, and Feast membership, you certainly hear me talk about motivation and what can go wrong when we are relying on motivation. So I cannot wait to hear what Jenn has to say about this. So we're talking motivation, consistency, intensity, willpower, like how it all fits together, what works, what doesn't work. Jenn, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Oh, Sarah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into all the details, everybody wants to know all the things you have to say. Can you tell us a little bit about you, what you do, all the amazing things that you've accomplished? Now, if you don't toot your own horn, I will. So let's hear it.
Hi everybody. I'm Jenn Trepeck. My podcast is called Salad with a Side of Fries. So, Burn, Fat, and Feast is an awesome, name for a podcast. So I was like, okay, we vibe. Like this
Yes.
is a thing. Um, my background is really business and marketing. I came to all the wellness stuff, like so many of us, through my own saga of weight management and my health and trying to figure all this stuff out. And I mean, I did every diet under the sun, gained and lost, lived on that roller coaster. And ultimately, what I learned that allowed me to say I kicked my food issues is what I call the nutrition education we're all supposed to know and no one ever taught us.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes not just how food impacts our body, and a little bit of like approachable science, but also why all the shoulds exist. Because I really believe the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it is understanding why,
Mm-hmm.
right? So learning all of that and even learning how that applied to cravings and other things that I was experiencing shifted all these food decisions from being emotional, like, why do I suck? Why can't I just not eat the free croissant? Right. To intellectual of like, oh, wait, I get why the croissant's appealing to me right now. What I actually need is this. And then I can decide if I actually still want the croissant.
Yeah.
So I became a health coach on the side of my full-time job because I believed everybody deserved this information. This was like late 2007. And I built my health coaching practice on the side of my full-time job, left my full-time job July of 2019, launched my podcast, Salad with a Side of Fries, in August of 2019. And now here we are. I get to sit here and talk to you, Sarah.
I love it. Oh my gosh, the story is my favorite. And it's so funny you said salad with a side of fries and Burn, Fat, and Feast. We 100% jive with each other. Like they're
Yeah.
basically saying the same thing, but saying it in a different way.
Yep.
And so yeah, you're so right. I love that you were just like, yeah, we know, but the difference between knowing it, doing it is understanding that why. That is, I mean, all hands up. Yes, yes, amen to that for sure. So okay, Jenn, can we start talking a little bit about this motivation? I mean, you kind of guide us here, but you mentioned like there's a myth behind motivation, the consistency, that intensity. So can you kind of dive into what that means?
Yes. Okay. So let's start with motivation for a second. And I think the myth that we've all been told is that motivation is what we need,
Mhm.
that motivation is what's going to get us started.
Yep.
So many people, like even the premise of Couch to 5K, right? That
Mhm.
lightning is going to strike and we're going to want to like elevate off the couch, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
go run or walk or do whatever. And then when we're sitting on the couch and we can't get ourselves off the couch, we think we're failing. We think there's something wrong with us. And we think that what's missing is motivation. What I want everybody to know is that there's nothing wrong with you. And what's missing is not motivation, because motivation actually comes later. Rather, what I want everybody to work toward, it's a different M word called momentum.
Mm.
Our objective in the beginning is to get to momentum. What that means is that it often starts as discipline.
Yeah.
So, discipline says it's in my calendar, I'm going to do it. When we do it consistently, we end up in momentum where most days, whatever the thing is happening. We notice when it's not happening and it comes back the next day, right? Most days it happens. We're in this momentum piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it comes back is motivation. Because motivation is this idea that we want to do the action to get the outcome, right? It is very difficult to connect to that outcome when we haven't experienced it or haven't experienced it recently.
Yes.
So the motivation, I'm just using, movement or activity because I started with this random couch to 5K thing. So
Yeah.
we're just going to go with it.
Yeah, do it.
Right.
Let's do it.
So motivation to get off the couch and move our bodies isn't what happens first. But over time, as we continue to move our bodies, we start to recognize that we feel better, that we have more energy, that we sleep better, that we're a happier person, that we're nicer to other people. And being able to make that connection between all of those things and the movement creates the motivation to do the movement.
Mhm.
But the idea that we're going to have that motivation at the jump, I think has set us all up, right? That's the myth. So in the beginning, we just want to schedule it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing in behavior change science. There's, different schools of thought. There are some that say, you know, choose the number of times in a week that you're actually going to hit, right?
Right.
There are other schools of thought where it's, you have to do it every day. And what we're seeing more and more in the research is that it actually depends on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes specifically to movement and activity and fitness, to create the habit, it does need to be something every day versus if it's something like eating more vegetables, we can say, 3 times this week, 4 times this week, I'm going to have 3 different kinds of vegetables at one meal.
Yeah.
And so different objectives kind of function a little bit differently. But there's something to be said for getting into momentum and letting the motivation come in time.
Yeah. Okay. This is so incredibly powerful because I 100% agree. I think that we're approaching this wrong. And I hear this on a regular basis from women of, I just don't have the motivation. If I only had the motivation, if I were as motivated as you, like over and over and over. And I'm not even sure where that started. And maybe, a little bit more about that, but we feel like that is what we have to lead with. And we also feel that if you're seeing someone, like if I'm seeing you right now, I'm like, oh, I want to do what Jenn is doing, but that you have the motivation that I don't have. But what you have in place is the consistency, the routine, the habits. And so it just becomes part of who you are versus just I have it or I don't have the motivation. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't want to work out every single day. I mean, that's just what I do for a living. I don't want to eat healthy every single day. I don't always have what we say, the motivation. And I don't know, Jenn, and you might speak a little bit more on this too, but I also feel like we put motivation and consistency in the all or nothing bucket of all in or all out. So for
Yes.
some reason, we see consistency as being perfection, seeing I'm consistent with my workouts. That means I work out every single day without skipping, or I eat healthy every single day without having any type of slip up. And the same for that motivation piece. You have to be always motivated or not motivated. And I feel that that ebbs and flows, and the consistency isn't perfection. Motivation isn't perfection. It's part of like what you're doing most of the time. And so you might be able to speak a little bit more on that, but I do think that those two schools of thought of, you lead with the motivation and then consistency equals perfection is what is really pulling us down, making us feel
1,000%.
bad about ourselves.
100%. So this brings up the idea of consistency versus intensity.
Mm-hmm.
So 100% is an intensity.
Yeah.
Consistency is a frequency.
Yes.
Right? So let's just recognize that these are two different things. And then let's talk about how they are actually inversely related.
Yeah.
Meaning, the more intense something is, the harder it is to maintain consistency, to maintain that frequency. The less intense something is, the easier it is to create consistency.
Right.
So if our objective, as we've discussed, is consistency, by definition, it requires less on the intensity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So when we have these sort of like two conflicting things, we can recognize how sometimes they might play together and how sometimes they might play against each other. So we can go through periods of intensity. But the expectation that we're going to be at 100% intensity and 100% consistency is once again setting ourselves up for failure. So we might do a more intense workout once or twice a week. Consistency says we are moving our bodies daily. Diet culture, gym culture, fitness culture has us believe that it doesn't count, right? Our movement doesn't count unless we sweat enough, unless we vomit, unless we, are doing something that makes us feel like we can't even walk after, right? Those things are an intensity piece, not a function of consistency.
Yeah.
So we can sort of look at it more like a wave pattern over time, right? There are periods of intensity, short periods of time, not infinite time, infinite intensity, right?
Yeah.
So we might say, okay, and the same thing goes for our nutrition, by the way. We might say, for a period of time, I'm going to eliminate grains or I'm going to eliminate dairy for a period of time. We start to feel like a failure when we expect that we're going to permanently live on an elimination diet, which is 1,000% not recommended, by the way.
Right.
Right. So we can say over a year, consistency is our objective. That might be 50 super intense workouts and 315 days of walking 20 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So it's a little bit of a reframe in our minds to understand that a lot of the stuff that we've been fed has put us into this place of expecting perfection and all or nothing, and that's what's required.
Yep.
The reality is, I sort of describe it as like, you're a kid, you went to recess once in 3rd grade. That doesn't mean that you don't have to move your body now. Right?
Right.
It doesn't matter how intense recess was. It requires consistency. We have to continue to move our bodies. So that being the objective, We want to scale down the intensity to be in this place to get into that momentum. And on occasion, maybe we have a moment here, a moment there of something more intense.
Yeah, I love this. I love this, the way that you're phrasing it. And it makes so much sense. So kind of can you put it into like a scenario situation of maybe somebody who's like, it's working out, every day with a trainer at the gym for a while. And now like I've done nothing for a year, like kind of put it in that perspective. Let's take this person. And then how would you say, okay, let's get back into a routine. Like what would you recommend, let's say, in this scenario?
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this question. I am a stickler for the words that we use. So I'm actually going to encourage this person to not talk about getting back, because that puts us in this place of trying to do this thing we did before, where clearly what we did before is not a fit for this moment and this season.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to get back, we're going to add movement now. We're going to start from where we are.
Yep.
So the first thing that we're going to implement is a 10-minute walk after you eat. I don't care what the weather is. You don't have to do it outside. You could circle your couch. You can walk around your house. I don't care. Walk around for 10 minutes after you eat a meal. Hopefully, that is like 3 times a day, right? Why are we making this recommendation? Number one, we can find 10 minutes. Number two, most of us think it takes longer to eat than it actually does. So even if we say, okay, I'm going to take a break and eat for a half hour or 20 minutes, I promise you, you'll have 10 minutes to walk.
Yeah, right. Right.
The theory of habit stacking says attach a habit to something that already exists so that we can make sure it happens, right? I sure hope you're eating a few times a day, right? So we can attach the walk to that. And research shows us that one of the most powerful things we can do for metabolic health and blood sugar, which translates into weight management and energy and cardiovascular health, and frankly, whole body health, is a 10-minute walk after we eat.
Yes.
So we're going to get a bang for our buck. Going to the consistency versus intensity piece too. We often, like you've heard, sitting is the new smoking, right? Because it's not human to sit all day. Okay, I posit it is also not human to sit all day and go berserk for an hour.
Yes.
So it's actually more human for us to move for a few minutes regularly than to have a wild 60 minutes once a day. So the little things add up. So number one, 10-minute walk after we eat. Need the reminder? Start to eat with your sneakers on.
Yeah.
Right? Just eat with your sneakers on.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So much here that I love. And, I want to go back to what you were saying about let's not, I don't know even the words I use, like get back or, go back to where you were. That's what I hear a lot, right? That's the phrase that is said.
Right.
But the other one that I hear all the time, and it, obviously when I said that, you're like, okay, wait, we're going to say it differently. The other one that I hear all the time is, on the wagon versus off the wagon.
Oh, well,
right. So I'm like, no,
well, that's all the on, off, good, bad, black, white thinking.
Yes. Right. Like there's no wagon. The wagon doesn't exist.
Right. I always get, I'm good or I'm bad. Like I actually have a client who texted me and she was like, I had this, sorry. And I was like, I am not the food police. Like this is, like no apologies.
Yeah.
And so I'm big on visuals. My elementary school classrooms back in, the 80s, we had a chalkboard that went clear across one wall, right? Above the chalkboard was the alphabet right? Left to right, A to Z. When we live in the land of on, off, good, bad, black, white, think of it like that pendulum is swinging A to Z, right? And then we talk about consistency and balance and choices, right? And then people think, oh, the objective is the pendulum to just stay straight down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's actually physically, chemically, physiologically, earth science impossible for a pendulum to stay still, right? What the objective actually is to have the natural pendulum swing, but it maybe goes like K to P
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the alphabet, back and forth, right? Back and forth in that gray area, back and forth all the time, a little here, a little there, right? That's the objective.
Yes.
We don't want to go A to Z. We also can't stay right at like M or whatever the middle of the alphabet is, right? We just want to keep it in that middle range, back and forth, bob and weave, live our lives, staying consistent, because your health outcomes, your quality of life is about the things that we do all the time, not the thing that we did once in fourth grade on recess.
Yes. 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 Amen to that. Yes. You hit the nail on the head because, again, so many ladies say, but I need to have balance, right? And we see visually when you say that word balance, I think that's what people see is like, okay, well, both of these things have to be equal to be balanced, right? My left and my right, I have to have equal time working, equal time with my family, equal time on me, equal time, it's not that way. And when we say balance, I love the pendulum analogy because that's exactly what it's like. It's a little give, a little take sometimes, and it's not equal things as we would see like a scale, weighing something
Right.
on one side versus the other.
Yeah. And this
Yes.
whole idea of, I think balance is a 4-letter word. Like, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
So, one of the things I talk about with my clients is that like work-life balance doesn't exist.
Yep.
Right. What if instead the objective was presence? So, wherever we are, that's where we are. So, if we're in our workout, our phone is not.
Yes.
When we are hanging out with our kids, we're actually hanging out with our kids. When whatever the task is, we're actually just present. And I say this with so much compassion and empathy because I struggle with this too, right? We are all a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
Presence is hard. I am queen of the multitasking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're all working on this. But the way I see it is that if the objective is presence, then I can get more out of a 20-minute workout or walk than if it was an hour. Sorry, I just hit the mic. Than if it was more out of a 20-minute walk than if it was an hour-long walk, but I'm constantly distracted and trying to do 85 things at the same time where I'm not even actually getting the benefit of the walk.
So true. Yeah.
Right? It's a little sort of woo-woo a little bit when we're talking about something that's so concrete as our movement choices and our food choices. But I connect it insofar as saying there is no guilt in our choices. Guilt shows up when we make a choice or we do something that is not aligned with the commitments that we've made to ourselves.
Right.
So, salad with a side of fries, eat the fries as long as it's an intentional choice. We are present to the choice. And by the way, that does not mean saying I'm going to eat the fries and then because I do that, I'm going to make myself do a crazy workout tomorrow.
Right.
Because I almost wore my shirt that says you can't outrun your fork. Because I say that all the time. You can't outrun your fork. We don't have to earn our food. As a human, you deserve nourishment that comes in the form of food, among other things, right? And choosing the fries at times might be even more nourishing than choosing the salad. As long as it's intentional,
Yes.
it's all good. There's no guilt, there's no need for it. And it is part of living in the gray area where that pendulum is sort of going like, what did I say? Like K to P, right?
Yes.
In that middle range.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jen, can we touch really quick on willpower? How does willpower fit into the mix here?
Yeah. So this could be a whole conversation unto itself. So the short version is to understand willpower is used anytime we require self-discipline or delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Willpower is a finite resource. So I use an analogy of like a cup. We all have a cup of willpower. What we want to do is understand what drinks from that cup and what replenishes that cup so that we have the willpower when we need it. Right? Multitasking drinks from that cup. Every decision that we have to make, like which route you're driving to get somewhere, uses that willpower cup, right? Uses that willpower. Big decisions for your family or your business or your career or work, right? We only have one cup of willpower. So all of those things are drinking from that cup. Stress depletes our willpower. PMS depletes our willpower. Low blood sugar depletes our willpower. And that one, it's like the irony of all irony because we're told so often eat less, right?
Yeah, right.
And then we think we suck because we're craving everything and we're like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, actually, you can't resist, right? You feel like you have no willpower to resist the cookie because you have low blood sugar, which actually means, correct, you don't have willpower. So we actually have to eat in order to have willpower, right?
Yeah.
Lack of sleep, decision fatigue, right? All of these little things that are actually big things throughout all of our days drink from our cup of willpower. So what we want to do is then start to build things into our days that start to replenish that willpower. Now, a quality night's sleep, quality and quantity of sleep, is our best way to replenish willpower. Also, movement in your day, working out, right? Setting and actually achieving a goal helps improve our willpower. Accountability helps improve our willpower. So, do you have a buddy that you're doing these kinds of things with? Do you have a coach? Right? Accountability is not, as I always say, it's not the food police, right? But accountability helps replenish our willpower. Two of my favorite things. One is distraction. Distraction improves our willpower. So the classic study of this is, you probably remember like the kids with the marshmallow. And if they waited, I can't remember how much time it was, but if they waited, they would get another marshmallow. But if they ate the marshmallow, they weren't going to get another one.
Yeah.
The kids who were able to wait the time distracted themselves. They played with their shoelaces. They looked at the ceiling. They stared at the clock, right? Any kind of distraction. So we can use distraction to our advantage in challenging moments. Think about Thanksgiving, right? Distract yourself by having great conversations. Get out of the room where all of the food is.
Right.
To-do lists can be interesting. Oh, the other favorite that I was going to share with you, charity.
Okay.
So buy the coffee for the person behind you.
Yeah.
Hold the door open for the person behind you. This actually sends physiological signals that we are safe and replenishes our willpower. Because our nature, and especially when self-control is needed, is that we are incredibly selfish. So by thinking about other people, thinking about other things, it sends the signal to the body that we are safe. Because if we have the capacity to think about other people, then we must be okay.
Yeah.
Now, I say that with the caveat that being kind to other people is amazing. Being kind only to other people is detrimental. right? So, we could go on and on, but that's sort of, the Cliff's Notes version of willpower. So recognize if we're trying to use our willpower, right? If we're trying to white knuckle it and we feel like it's not working, consider how many things are drinking from your willpower cup in a day and how many things are adding back to that cup. Now, there are a lot of experts out there who will say that you have 1 cup for the day and that's it. I have experienced it. I've seen it over and over with my clients that when we add these things into our day, it's like adding willpower back into that cup.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to sort of be aware of that. And then the people who most effectively use willpower, they use willpower to create habits. And then once the habits are in place, it is second nature. It's where we started, right? It's just who we are. It doesn't drink from our willpower cup. And then we have something in that cup for those challenging situations when we need it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it all comes full circle, and I say this a lot. They're all connected, right? That's one of the things we hear a lot too. I don't have the motivation. I don't have the willpower. Well, if you, like you said, put some of these things back in your cup, then you would at the end of the day. And that's a big thing that a lot of women will say too. I'm just so depleted at the end of the day. I'm drained, and I don't have the energy, and I just eat whatever, and I don't want to work out. And so being mindful, I love all these ideas of ways that we can pour back into our willpower.
Yeah. And it's no coincidence that breakfast or morning is easier than the end of the day, because think about the decision fatigue that's happened at that, right? Everything you've done all day drank from that willpower cup. Of course.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
Like, that to me was the biggest thing. Like, in learning all of this stuff, it was like, oh my God, the weight of the world is lifted off my shoulders, right? It used to feel like I was naked and barefoot trying to climb Mount Everest. And everybody around me was like, climb. What's wrong with you?
Right.
Just climb. Come on, we're all doing it. Why aren't you? Right? And then I learned all this stuff, and it was like, okay, wait, now I have equipment. Now I have gear. Now I can go up, and even if I fall or, whatever, like, I can give it another go because I have tools.
Yes.
That's what this is. So, like, you don't have to be naked and barefoot trying to climb Mount Everest, right? Like, nobody wins for making this the hardest.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think, if you're to walk away from this podcast with anything, these are my two huge ahas, takeaways, is number one, presence over balance. Have the presence wherever you are, be present there. And there's not anything wrong with you. You are not failing. It's all in the systems and what we can do as far as putting our own tools and our own habits into place. Would you agree, Jenn?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And even those little things, it takes time.
Yeah.
And we just want to give ourselves that time and recognize, like, making any change is not easy. Right? So we're all a work in progress. We're all doing the things, and, like, it's totally fine to do one thing at a time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One thing at a time. That's how we make progress. We think we have to do all the things, but just if you do the one thing, and I have it stack all the time. We talk about this. So if you do the one thing, then you can do another thing, and then you can keep stacking them. And oftentimes I talk about the domino, like, what's the first domino, that one thing that you can do that will help push all the others forward. Okay, this has been amazing, Jenn. I feel like we could go on and on, and I would love to have you on again, because this has been so beneficial. I know our listeners are going to love this episode. Before we go, tell us where we can find you, and then I think you have a freebie too to share.
Yes. Okay. So all social media, I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JennTrepeck. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. On the website, there's a freebie for you called It's Not What to Eat, It's How to Eat. Because no one needs to tell you to eat a cucumber over a Twix. We got that. This is, how do I eat the Twix so that it doesn't have the same impact on my body as it does right now when you eat that Twix? And then Salad with a Side of Fries podcast, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you will find it.
Perfect. Perfect. Again, Jenn, thank you so much for your expertise. It's been amazing chatting with you. And we'll ask you back again, I'm sure.
I can't wait. Sarah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.